The thoughts, views, and opinions expressed in this podcast
Blah, blah,
are
blah. It's entertainment, people. Enjoy the show.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Unboxing Photography with Jim and Ricky. Today's episode is Unboxing F.E.A.R. So there's a couple ways we're going to go with this one. I'm really excited to get into this topic. It's a common question that we get asked as a more experienced photographers who specialize in the streets. So, yeah. Jim, how you been?
good, man. Yeah, interesting couple of weeks.
All right.
Interesting couple of weeks in New York and in and around the world of photography. So,
Okay. Like to share anything?
well, I guess the first thing, if we're going to talk about fear, the first thing that and we won't spend a lot of time on it, but because this isn't what the show is. But the first thing that the first fear that hit me over the past couple of weeks is when I saw those headlines about how Kodak was going to go out of business. I was like, oh no, Triax. But it turns out that probably isn't going to be the case. I'm sure that whatever the byline is on Kodak and their business woes, what it's all going to boil down to is more expensive film prices. Is probably, that's all it is going to be. So I don't think they're going to go out of business, but I'm sure it's just going to mean that, we're just going to end up paying more for whatever we use. So, but I'm glad that those fears were, allayed, let's say, that they chilled those fears out. Cause there was a minute there when I was scrolling and I was like, what the fuck? It's like, so anyway, but it's been a couple of interesting weeks.
I'm pretty sure Kodak's already been through this once already in the past. So they're probably gearing up. But I did say this, I think a year or two ago, film companies are going to be the death of film companies. Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Because I saw somebody posting what a box of portrait was before the pandemic, and it was like $30 or something for a roll of for a box of 5 120s, and now it's like the same portrait 400 is like $74 or something like that. And it's kind of a theme that during COVID, I get that during COVID everything went up, everything in the world went up because when there's no planes flying. And everything's trying to get onto boats, and there's limited. I get the supply chain was like a mess, and that things weren't available, so everything went up. I get it, but I think these guys raised everything, and then after COVID came down and the cost went back down, they were like, "Okay, cool, just leave it at that price." And that's why I think that's one of the reasons why we find ourselves in the situation that we're in, where everything is just crazy expensive, and we're all just struggling to pay for literally anything. Everything's just nuts. But I don't know if Kodak's situation is that they are having issues with paying back their other bills, so they raised all these prices, and they're just we're helping pay for other bills, and there's a lot of margin in what they're doing with film. I don't know what their finances are, but I find it really hard to believe that something that cost $29 just before the pandemic now has to cost $75 or $80. And when I talk to most people on the street about film and why they maybe got back into digital, if they were in film for a little while, or why they're thinking about leaving film, it's exactly what you said. It's just the prices have gone up to a point where it's just stupid. $80 for a box of film it just gets to a point where you have to be a really, really dedicated film shooter. And I think a lot of people that shoot film who I meet, there's, let's say, a segment of film shooters who are psycho about it, like maybe you and I are, and it's almost like a religion at some point. But then there's other people who just, it's fun.
Yeah.
And
hipsters.
And if you're in that, and that's fine. I'm glad those people shoot. I'm glad they find it fun. It is fun. They're buying Polaroids or Instax or they're getting disposable cameras, blah, 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 whatever. And then they decide they want a little bit more flexibility. But especially if you're young and trying to make it in this world and your fun also involves like wanting to go and see concerts and go out for drinks with your friends and go out and get, breakfast with them on the weekends and pay your rent and all that. Yeah. And then and it's like, a box of fucking film is $80. It's like, at some point you're just going to be like, fuck this, like I'll just get a camera and that, someone will put out a camera that takes digital pictures that look like film, and all the shit will be, all those people will be like, bye, So, I mean, also because a lot of those folks that I talk to when I talk about saving money in film is, and I say, oh, well, you can develop yourself, you can scan yourself. They're just like, nah, don't want to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And the investment is just too much, I mean, if I wasn't, the amount of film that I shoot, if I wasn't doing all that myself, I would have gotten off the train already.
Yeah.
Because in the beginning of me shooting film, I looked at what, for the first few months when I was having the lab do everything, I looked at how much it cost versus how many rolls I had shot. And then I quickly thought to myself, I better do this myself or this is going to get crazy. And when I look at how much film I shot after that, if I did the math on what it would have cost me in developing over the course of a year, it would have been like, I don't know, $5 or $6 grand or something like that in developing and scanning fees. So for me to go out and buy the negative supply kit for scanning and to buy Patterson reels and chemicals and stuff like that, relative to $5,000 or $6,000, like it made a lot of sense. But for most people,
yeah,
I would just like shoot one roll a month or something like that. Yeah. But anyway,
so my film days have slowed down a lot recently, and it's not that I don't like shooting film. I still prefer shooting film over digital. It's a more enjoyable experience for me. Sounds cliche, right? But I've been doing this before it got all hipster popular. And for me, it's the hassle. I don't want to deal with it. Yeah. I don't develop anymore.
Well, which part of it is a hassle for you?
So when I lived in England, I was able to get the chemicals to develop myself. And I did, and it was very cost effective for me. However, back then, I remember when a box of Portra 400 and 800 were under $50 for the 5-pack.
Yeah.
So I was buying a lot of film, and I'm glad I stocked up. I still got at least 40 rolls of film that I just got sitting in the closet waiting to be shot. And I would say I would go through that in like 2 weeks. But now it's like really slow, my film. I still carry my film cameras, but I'm very, very particular with what I shoot, right? So like one roll will last anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks if I'm shooting consistently. So when I first started to shoot the film, I wanted the whole experience, right? So I didn't have a dark room, but then research, I can still develop. And then I got the scanner. So I still have my scanner. And I was developing and scanning. And honestly, that whole setup that I did kind of paid for itself.
Yeah.
And then I came back to Okinawa. They don't have shops or stores that sell film chemicals. Tokyo has plenty of them, but I have to ship them down here. And there was like weird shipping laws because of the hazardous materials in Japan.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was like extra. And then I did the math. And I was like, well, and then I still got to develop it. So basically, long story short, when I came back here, the cost effectiveness of developing it it didn't match. So I took it to the lab. It's about $12 to develop only because I do my own scans. I don't need to get it scanned.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Yeah, I guess I'm lucky because I live in New York and B&H, like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, right. And B&H, it's so funny. When I was in Paris, I was walking down the street just on the way to dinner with my family in Le Marais district. And, there was a guy standing on the corner, just leaning up against the building wearing a B&H hat. I'm like, hey, B&H. I'm like, I'm there every week. We had like a laugh. Like a guy in Paris wearing a B&H hat. It's like you can't escape it. But I just, for chemicals, a different story. Color's a different story. Because, I get the Cinestill kit, and that's like $30 or $32 or something like that. I'm using Ago, like Vintage Ritual, to help me with the developing on that, because that makes color a lot easier. But for black and white, it's like there's no reason for me ever to get anybody to do black and white, because I just use Rodinol, Ilford-Stop, Ilford-Fix, and distilled water. And my cost of developing a roll is maybe, 25 cents or 50 cents.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's just, I would never pay somebody $12 to develop a roll black and white for me, because
I don't got the option.
It's just so easy to just use Rodinol and like, it's a piece of cake. But the hardest thing about that whole process is just getting the chemicals down to 70 degrees. Because in the summertime, it's so warm here. And so I'm like, I was putting ice packs in water, and I'm just like, tell me, just take your distilled water and put it in the fridge for half an hour before you develop. I was like, oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll get the temperature down. Anyway, but
a sous vide. That's what a friend of mine, Carlos.
No, I have a sous vide, but my problem with the black and white was getting the temperature down. A sous vide doesn't lower the temperature. The ambient temperature in the apartment in New York City here is like in the high 70s, and I got to get it down to 68 degrees to do black and white Rodinol development. And so a sous vide is not going to help with that.
Okay.
So the only way I was going to get you got to lower the temperature. And so I was just trying to trying to mix my chemical. I'm putting like ice packs in the containers and stuff like that. And then I just like realized that I don't know why. It's just like, maybe it's just like when you get a little older, it takes you a minute to like get your common sense back. But I was like, why don't I just take my distilled water and like just put it in the fridge? Mm-hmm. And I've got a couple of half-gallon things of distilled water, and I just put one in the fridge and just get the temperature down into like the 50s, and then add some of that to the higher temperature water until I get like the balance of 68 degrees. Or I just take my thermometer out and I just monitor the one in the fridge and go, okay, I'm almost at 68 degrees. And when it's at 68 degrees, I take it out and I mix. But it takes like 2 seconds to do it.
Okay.
And anyway,
you got a whole process.
But it's it sounds like a whole process, and obviously it was, given that I only started shooting film like a year ago, April. Like in terms of only shooting film, I knew nothing about developing at all.
Yeah.
I mean, this could help segue into F.E.A.R, right? I didn't know anything about it. I scanning it. It just seemed, I looked at some of the videos, and then I got people online doing it, and the tanks, and making sure the temperature was right, and which chemicals to use, and agitation, and all this. I mean, it just seemed like, and I think that's the thing with like a lot of film photography, like what you hear about film photography, and when I talk to people and what their perception is about it, they're just like, I'm going to mess up all the pictures. It's really expensive. It's going to be hard. None of my digital skills are going to transfer over. If I want to develop myself, it's like such an arcane thing, blah, 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 blah. And I think when I first started shooting, and I thought to myself, like, and one of the reasons why I didn't do it was I thought like, it was kind of fear, it was like, this is going to take a lot to learn this, and it's going to be really expensive, and I'm going to make a lot of mistakes. And what's the point? The picture is the picture. And when we talk about like kind of fear, I think one of the things is one of the benefits of conquering your fears or facing your fears is that sometimes there's something on the other side that you can learn.
Yeah.
And that will be of value to you. And that will be, your growth. And there's some growth on the other side. And I think when the subject of this, like when I was thinking about what we want to talk about and talk about the concept of fear, I think sometimes we're scared of the wrong things, and there's this great British actor, Terrence Stamp, who just died this past week. And he played General Zod in Superman. And he was in a great movie called The Limey. And he was in a movie called Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. And he was just like 60s character. David Bailey photographed him. I mean, an amazing looking guy and a really intense actor. His brother managed The Who. Like really interesting character. But I was watching because he died. They were showing all these video clips of him. And he was in Priscilla, the Queen of the Desert, which was about a group of like, you know, drag queens who kind of tour around, I think, in Australia on a bus. And I think, I haven't seen the movie in a zillion years, but I think one of them has like a son, and maybe the son goes on tour with them and he gets closer to him. Anyway, it's just like an amazing movie. And Terrence Stamp was talking about how, you know, he's always played this like kind of tough guy gangster in these like artsy, edgy kind of movies. And he got the script for this movie. And in the movie, he's like, plays like the main drag queen, you know, older, experienced, blah, blah, blah. And he got it and he just like read the script and he like went to turn it, just was like, wasn't even going to look at it. And there was an actress there who he heard him telling his agent he wasn't going to do it. And he said, stop, you know, put the phone down and said, like, you need to do this movie. And it isn't about a career move or just getting a paycheck. This is about personal growth. And he ended up doing the movie and it was like, after all these years, what people had thought about him and his work as an actor and everything, it completely changed. And people saw his range. And then he realized what he was capable of doing because he didn't think, I can do this kind of character, right? So it was just this clip that I really, when we were talking about the subject for this week, I thought to myself, you know, he didn't want to do it. And I don't know if it was necessarily fear on his part, but he just was like, that's not me. And he did it and found out something about himself and grew. And it had all this, you know, had an amazing impact on his career and on his life as a creative person. So sometimes we tell ourselves what we can't do, or like what I was talking about with film, like saying, like, oh, it's going to be so much to learn and all. And then you actually do it and you go, well, wait a minute, this isn't hard. This isn't something that I wasn't capable of. This is actually something that's easy. Like everybody who's always told me like how you mess up so much when you start shooting film. Like, I don't know. I can't even count how many thousands of frames on film in the past year and a half. And I could count on one hand the pictures that I fucked up, you know? And it was usually because I don't know, I was so excited about taking the picture that I just had the settings on the camera wrong. And then when I looked, I go, oh, damn. I took the picture and I completely, you know, I forgot the meter because I was so excited about taking the photograph. But that whole thing of kind of not being scared about the wrong things. Like to me, the thing that we should be most scared of, and we'll talk about some of the common things that people are scared of. The thing you should be most scared about is being scared of what I'm scared of about fear is being scared of something going to stop me from learning something that I might otherwise know or becoming the photographer who I might otherwise be because of some blockage or some bullshit belief that I have that is a wall that I've put there or I've let peers put there or peer pressure or some photographic dogma that's in front of me, that if I went past that, I would be a better photographer or I would be the photographer that I ultimately want to be. That's what scares me, that there's blockages there that maybe I don't even know about or that I've put there for myself or I've let other people put there for me that's stopping me from becoming who I want to be.
So I think...
Can you relate to that at all?
I do. And I think it's possible that people misuse the word fear in photography in certain regards. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. They're probably not scared. They don't know, right? So maybe it's the fear of knowing, right? The unknown, like what is the unknown, the uncertainty, things along those lines. For your instance, you know, how many film frames am I going to mess up? I can say when I first started shooting film that I was so excited for that opportunity. I never once considered how many frames I was going to mess up in that regards, right? Oh man, I don't want to shoot this because what if I mess it up? I accepted that it was new, it was unknown. So it was a new process and I was learning. I accepted that there would be mistakes, but the mistakes ultimately learn or they the end goal is learning, right? So you make a mistake and you learn from it. Okay, I just educated myself on what not to do. So I accepted that. Now, there has been times where I was afraid to do photography in certain regions, right? And again, going with the uncertainty part, I don't know how people are going to react. But
yeah,
it was an emotion of fear. And I can say, I think the first time that I felt that kind of unease was when I went back to Chicago, because I had a very, I had a rough past growing up, right? So gangbangers and stuff like that. And I didn't want to get involved with that kind of scene. So I was a little scared on where I would go to do my photography. That was fear, right? And then same thing in California. This is a new land. This is new city. I've never been here before. And I embraced it. I still took my chance, but I was smart about it, right? So it wasn't like I was out there doing anything I shouldn't have. But I was like, I seen videos on Instagram. I seen videos on YouTube where people are just walking around, minding their own business, taking photos, and then someone just having a bad day erupts. So that was fear for me. And I think there's different levels.
Well, like what videos are you talking about? You're talking about like videos where someone's trying to take surreptitious street photographs and then somebody gets pissed off because they took their picture without consent. Is that what you're referring to, or
so
what?
Those videos, I think, warrant the person to get a little angry, right? Like, see people walking up, they do the camera in the face, the Bruce Gilden, right? So they do that. And then the person kind of overreacts, right? And then I just seen just like people walking, and I seen it in England. It wasn't towards me. I was with somebody, and essentially the same thing, right? So they were taking photos, and then someone's like, "Oh, are you taking pictures of people without asking their permission?" So I'd seen stuff like that.
Well, there's always that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a tough one, because if you're gonna take pictures of people without consent, even though you legally have the right to do it, you would be naive not to understand that there might be some people who might be uncool with that, because there are just some people who are suspicious of other people. What are you going to do with it? Blah blah blah. There is that out there, and if you're going to go out and shoot in that particular way, you're going to encounter that straight up. Just like I'm pretty much 100% consent based when it comes to my photography now. And I have to accept that some people I'm going to ask if I want to take their photograph, but they're going to say no. And I just thank them and tell them that they have a good day. And to me, it's like hearing no makes the yeses more valuable. Mm-hmm. If everybody said yes, it's like I took my kids to the candy store the other day and said, you can get whatever you want, because they had off from camp this week, and it was just a day when we were around. And they were like, it was like the most amazing thing for them. I'm like, you can get 3 things. And they went into this candy store, got whatever they wanted. It was like the best thing ever.
Everlasting.
If I took them to that candy, if I took them to the candy store every single day, after 3 or 4 days, I'd be like, you want to go to the candy store? They'd either be like, nah, I'm good. Or they'd be like, I don't know, I don't want anything, because you get it all the time.
Yeah.
So in a way, getting told no can almost be like a good thing because you realize that this is something special, like it isn't something, don't take it for granted. There's that aspect to it. I had kind of an experience last Saturday where my friend Purcell said to me, hey, there's a thing for World Photography Day on the steps of the Brooklyn Museum that Jamel Shabazz is doing, who is a kind of revered street photographer in New York who shot pictures in the 70s and in the 80s of, people in the city. And it's like a document of that time. A lot of those people are gone, but it's great. It's like just around the start of hip hop and the end of the disco era. And it's during the crack years. And, he's had exhibits kind of all over the world.
Mm-hmm. He's 100%
and his books out. Yeah. And his photographs are like they almost look like a family photo album. Excuse me. Of New York City during that time, except it was like the whole city was his family. And so anyway, he was doing a thing for World Photography Day. So my friend said, why don't you come out to Brooklyn? He's doing this thing and everybody's, a bunch of people going to be here. And I was like, oh, Jamel Shabazz is amazing. Yeah. So I got on the train, I got out there, I got off the stop, walked up and saw my friend and we went over. They said, oh yeah, it's kind of like broken down now and it's gone across the street. And my friend said to me, I didn't realize it, but it's a black photographers get together. And I said, okay, cool. And we went across the street and there might've been one other white person there. But I don't think so. And he kind of had all the photographers in a circle. There were maybe like 40 people. And previous to that, there were like, I don't know, 100 or something on the steps of the museum that some people left. But he had everybody in a circle and started talking about his life and about how he got into photography and what it was like before he got into photography. And it was this narrative of what life was like prior to the crack years and then him getting into the military and being in Germany and then coming back to New York City and then what that was like. And he had people there who were with him who were not photographers, but who were people that were important in his life that were getting up and talking also about what was happening at that time. And some of them were members of the 5% Nation and they were talking about their neighborhoods being destroyed and everything. And as I'm listening to this, I felt like, I'm like, is this an intrusion? Because what the knowledge that he was sharing was so personal and it was so relevant to the Black community and his community. And he was trying to impart this information about these challenges and what they were faced with and relate it to what's happening now. And he was calling all these photographers to be activists in changing the narrative because there's so much negativity in the world right now. And there's so much negative imagery and so much ugliness in terms of political policy all over the world and things that people are doing and war and famine and genocide, all this stuff. And he was saying, your job is to put positive energy out there and creativity in there and counter that narrative. Mm-hmm. Not to ignore it, but to put something out there that is like that shows that life can be about something else. So people remember that there's goodness and there's kindness and there's empathy and it's really important for you as a responsibility to show that. But he was speaking to that through the lens of his experience as a Black man and as someone who went through the devastation of crack and how his faith affected his decision to be a better person, how people of that faith taught him to be the person that he is. And it was not something that I was of. It was fascinating to listen to, but it was a message to all the people who were gathered, kind of say, here's what I did and we're at that moment and now, and here's what you need to do. And I felt like I was not that message wasn't necessarily for me specifically.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt almost like I might be intruding. I do think that the message applies to all of us. I felt that applied to me. Like I was like, yeah, me going out and taking pictures of kids in Soho who are like stylish and happy and who are friends. And there's this like clear love in the photographs. And I love my subjects, you know, I relate to my subjects. I feel like I'm putting something positive out there. So I feel like I'm countering the narrative right now and putting an alternate to all that out in the world. But I did have this kind of hesitation, this fear, like you're talking about, because I'm like, should I be here? Because this wasn't made for me. Is this like, you know, I felt like almost like it was an intrusion, and I wasn't made to feel that way,
mm-hmm.
but it gave me pause, you know? And then when I just ended up standing there and listening, and everybody was really welcoming, and there was a group photograph at the end, and I took some pictures of everybody. And then I took some individual pictures of some of the people there, and I thanked him for for sharing his story and said how compelling it was to hear it. And I just stayed. You know, I felt like, should I be here? But I'm like, well, let me see. I'm just going to stay. And I stayed and I listened. And then afterwards, I went up and I asked to photograph some people. Yeah. And I just, you know, and if somebody had said to me, like, you shouldn't be here, or this isn't cool, or if I got that vibe, I would have left. And part of that is having our antenna up and being receptive and understanding where we are, like having a clue, you know, getting that spidey sense of whether or not you should be somewhere. But I could see where a lot of other photographers might have been like, no, this isn't a me thing, or I shouldn't be here, or something like that. And I just thought, like, let me stay and let me hear and let me listen. And even though this message is not specifically for me, there's something I can take from this that's of benefit to me and relates to what this person's talking about. And I felt better for having done it.
Yeah.
Like I felt better for having heard his story as someone growing up and seeing his neighborhood devolve from a place of love into a place of people killing each other because of crack. And everyone there is with a camera, and he's saying, go out and show what's positive in our community to the world, because our community is being painted a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's not the whole story. That's not the story at all. That's just the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to counter that narrative. So anyway, it was a moment where I just felt like, am I intruding? Is this a me thing? Maybe I should withdraw.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't throw rocks in the water. You know, there's a way to there's a way. I didn't feel like I'm going to take this giant rock and throw it in the water and make this giant splash. You know, like there's a way to kind of edge up to the water and not make not do a cannonball into the pool. You know, like maybe have some small ripples. And people saw me, and everybody was cool, and I felt good about it. You know, because it was. I just felt like it was information that I didn't necessarily have. Anyway, that's a very long story, obviously, but.
No, that's cool. I think it relates, right? Because again, fear, and I think the message that they're trying, or Jamal was trying to relay, would have kind of been hypocritical have they said, "You got to go, you can't be here," right? So they're trying to, promote all this positivity, and if they had asked you to leave, that's kind of like the complete opposite. So. Letting you stay, or you just, you were there for the whole entire event is pretty cool. And you got to see Jamal Shabazz.
Well, and hear him talk about his personal story and friends, people that he saw that he was friends with, that he saw got shot, got killed. Mm-hmm. You know, like when someone's kind of talking about that, that's heavy. But this is the thing. I behaved in an appropriate manner.
Mm-hmm.
If I had a flash on the camera and was like going up to him, sticking him in his face, going amongst everybody, blah blah blah, it would have been uncool, and they would have said, "Yo."
Yeah.
And I could have very easily done a cannonball into the pool and then been told to get the fuck out of there, But being respectful is part of it, And on a very simple level, because you and I talked before about how you hear all the time from people about. I'm so scared to go up and take pictures close to people or ask for consent or, or whatever. And that's a lot. I think a lot of people start with that surreptitious thing because they're like, let me see if I can sneak a picture because I don't want to be obvious about what I'm trying to do, or I don't want to go up and ask somebody because I have some kind of fear. I think it's kind of easy to conquer those fears, and you just do it by doing it. It's the same. I hear it all the time in beginning, any street photography workshop, any portrait photography workshop I've ever been to, any conversation with anybody who's new about getting into this stuff, they always ask, oh, how do you go up to people? I'm like, how do you hammer a nail? Pick up a nail, start hammering. You might hit your thumb, but you know what? After you hammer in like the 100th nail, you will have had it. It's just fucking hammering in nails. Like, there is no like, how do I hammer the nail without hammering the nail? Like it's just, there is no that is you can't. You just have to do it, kind of thing.
Yeah, that's one of the most common questions that I would get, and that was me. I was scared when I first started really going into street photography and taking pictures of just complete random strangers. And I was with other people when I was learning, right? So you kind of have that courage, like, oh, I got 3 people with me, so at least I'm not alone. That, kind of like that group is kind of there to assist. Not in a negative, violent kind of way, right? But, you kind of feel more protected when you're with others, when you're first starting off. And you see other people do it, and then you just see the confidence that they have. And then, that confidence just kind of transfers over into the next person and so on and so forth. And I seen it. And it took a little while, but I ultimately grew out of the fear of taking pictures of strangers in the street. Now, me personally, I'm not a big fan of like the Bruce Gilden-y look, so I don't particularly practice that style of photography. Not that I couldn't if I wanted to. I just choose not to because I try to achieve a different kind of look. But I see people from all over. Even when I would visit Tokyo, they do the walkie-talkie flash thing, and the Bruce Gilden. I just gonna call it the Bruce Gilden effect, right? They do the Bruce Gilden thing, and some people understand it, some people don't. Actually, right before this call, I was doom scrolling on Instagram, just trying, killing some time. And there was a post where someone's like, this is disgusting photography. Who is this guy? And why is he doing it? It was basically just a guy walking down the right. He was by himself. He was minding his own business. He saw a person. He pulled out his camera and his flash out of nowhere. And he walked up to the person, took a few shots, and then he just walked on about his business, right? So, like, people are still doing it. But usually that's probably where most people have the fear to do it. I kind of did a one-on-one photography lesson with someone, and we were going, through the streets of Tokyo. And that was his thing. He wanted to kind of grow out of that fear. And he's like, how do you do it? And I was like, you just got to do it. The more you do it, the more comfortable you'll be. And I was giving them tips and advice. I was like, I'm going to be honest, like, you're going to realize most people don't realize you're taking their photo. And he's like, really? I was like, yeah, just watch. So we went out, and he was following me because he wanted to observe, and I was just walking and I was taking pictures. And it was like nothing. And we got to a point where we were down the end of the path where we said we would walk. And he's like, oh man, I didn't, you make it seem so easy. By the end of the day, he was doing the same. And he had grew so comfortable with it that he was excited, and he was just like very visible. I got to follow up with him. I got to see how he's doing. It's been a while. But he was very excited by the end of the day, just kind of getting over that fear. So that's one of the most common fears that I've seen I'm going to think about what's the most uncommon fear in photography. It could be anything. Really.
Before we get into that, can we talk about the Bruce Gilden thing for a second?
Yeah.
When people talk about like the Bruce Gilden thing, to me, because I have a couple of Bruce Gilden books, and they are not the books that you would think of that when you think of the Bruce Gilden thing. I have the Haiti book, and I have something called New York Lost and Found, which is his early pictures when he was like a cab driver and probably doing a lot of speed and stuff. And the kind of thing that's a shame to me about the tag that he has, there's these videos on YouTube that show him doing his, let's call it confrontational style of photography. Because what he does by shoving a camera in someone's face and blasting a flash and getting it right up in their grill, you're allowed to do it. There's no law against it. But you're being a fucking asshole when you take a picture that way. Let's face it. You're being confrontational. There's no two ways about it. You're being a fucking asshole when you take a picture that way. And I would say this to him if I met him. I'd be like, you know, when you do that, you're being an asshole. You know that. He knows that. He knows that. He doesn't only take pictures that way, though.
Yeah.
He takes pictures also, like if you look at his, like, you know, medium format stuff where he takes the pictures of the people who have like messed up teeth and they're, you know, and he like, I don't know if he's like cranking up the clarity on his photographs or what, but it's like you can see every pore and they just look like,
yeah.
And he talks about how much he loves his subjects. And I don't know, once you've seen 3 or 4 of those photographs and he's taken hundreds of them, like I get it after 3 or 4 photographs. I don't need to, like Leica's going to have an exhibit that's going to open in Meatpacking in a few weeks or a month or whatever, and it's going to be all that work. I don't even know if I'm going to go see it because maybe I will because it'll be better to see it printed as opposed to seeing it in a magazine or a page or on a screen. But I kind of get it. It's framed. Every picture's framed. It's a headshot of people who kind of are unattractive, and it's all their unattractiveness in massive resolution at a huge size. And it's interesting because you can almost look at it like abstract art in a way or something, you know. But he's not one type of photographer. That photography is not shoving a flash in somebody's face without their consent. It's asking them. It's asking them for consent and then highlighting their flaws almost in a way to make them beautiful. And that's a really interesting way to kind of approach the photograph. It's not. I don't find it particularly enjoyable to look at, but it's interesting what he's doing. But he also, you know, did this series of pictures where he hangs out with bikers from the Bronx and from Harlem, and he put a book of that out recently, and like really got embedded with those folks and took pictures of them at all their hangs and stuff like that. That's not confrontational. Yeah. He confronted those people. Being in New York, I can tell you that it's not he'd get fucking stomped, you know. And so he got in with them and is friends with them. They've you know. They look at him almost as like family. Yeah. The pictures he took in Haiti, you know, at voodoo ceremonies and stuff like that, are just like, you know, he's gone down and he's like got and hung with those people and getting right up, and they know he's there and he's not confronting them. So when people talk about Bruce Gilden, there's one kind of dicky fucking way that he takes pictures, but that's not the entirety of who he is. And if you want to extract something from Bruce Gilden, look at all the different types of pictures he does and say, you know, oh, I can be more than one type of photographer. I don't have to be a guy whose whole thing is sticking for the rest of my life, sticking a camera and confronting someone and scaring the piss out of them and flashing a camera right in their face from 2 feet away and go, oh, you know, yay, you know, I got a picture. Like when I first started doing like the kind of street photography thing in New York, I was using my Q2M and just range focusing it, and it's a 28, and I would get right up on somebody. Like I would wait until I was about to bump into them and take their photograph, and I would have the camera kind of at almost like chest level, and I knew where to hold it so I could get them in the frame. And so for me, when I went to, I would almost collide with the person before I took the picture. I would have to step away at like the last minute. And the way that I got that close to the person without them paying attention to the camera was I would distract them by talking to myself. Like I was having some kind of crazy, I'd be like, you know what? And I'd be like, I don't know why you have to, and I would just like, and they'd be looking at me having this conversation with myself. because people talk to themselves in New York City,
They were
and
scared
they
of
wouldn't
you.
see that I had the camera. Yeah, and I would walk right up, and I would be walking up to people who, a lot of times who maybe had issues themselves, and I'd get it literally right up when I was about to bang into them. I'd be like, and then at the last minute, I'd be like, just walk out of the way. But I'd get one frame, and I got a lot of really great pictures. I put a bunch of stuff of that on my feed lately. But the reason I stopped doing it was I realized when I looked at the frames that I wasn't controlling my frames. Everything was like an accident that I got. And it was cool to get those kind of pictures, but I wasn't controlling what the frame was about. And I saw the picture was weaker. So I was like, okay, I want to control the frame, so I'm not going to do that. But I didn't tell myself I can only be one kind of photographer. And Bruce Gilden is not one type of photographer. So when we talk about Bruce Gilden pictures, go look at his Haiti book.
No, I
and
know.
and go take pictures like that.
I agree with that part. Like he's more than just one style photographer. He's in Magnum for a reason, right? I only used it for the certain look that he's more known for. So
but everybody, when you say that, but everybody says everybody who drops his name, that's what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And I don't know that all those people have educated themselves about what the entirety of his capability or his work output is. And that's why it's important to go back and look and there's people who go, oh, I do like a Bruce Gilden type thing. It's like, well, which part of what he does, which part of his work?
Yeah. Family.
Right. And then, I don't know that. Have you looked at his Lost and Found book, which is like classic New York photography from the 70s, none of which is confrontational? No, I haven't. Look at the entirety of the work, because it's instructional to say, like, okay, he's known for one particular thing, and there's videos on YouTube of him doing that one particular thing, but that isn't the entirety of what he's about, and we don't need to be one kind of photographer.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? I've been wanting to get the Haiti. It was random. I have a Bruce Gilden book where he did a promotion for Gucci, and I bought it because it's crushed velvet. And then when I was like, what is this? Like Bruce Gilden. And I was like, House of what? Like, it was commissioned by Gucci. It's like, why is Gucci hiring Bruce Gilden? It was sealed, so I couldn't see what's in it, but I was curious. And I bought it. It's a very beautiful book. And he shot fashion, fashion editorial style, but in Bruce Gilden style. And it's not all close-ups, like you said, flash in the face. And he's a very well-rounded photographer. So he's got the ability to do more than just the bad reputation, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just have to be careful of that. Because you could look at Bruce Gilden and say, cautionary tale, someone who I don't want to be like, someone who's a bad photographer, all this stuff. Because you've watched YouTube videos, you've heard people mention, Bruce Gilden, confrontational, in people's face, blah, 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 all this shit. And then you just take that on board and just, that's your knowledge.
Yeah.
That's what it is. That's who he is. But then if you educate yourself, and that's another way to get through fear. Once you educate yourself, it's really easy to make people who aren't educated scared. It's really, when you haven't done something, when you don't know about anything, and someone's telling you, oh, this is the way that it is, and it's difficult, it's scary, it's a challenge, blah, blah, blah. If all you do is listen to what people have told you and accept all that, then that's all you're going to know. Go educate yourself. And anybody here who thinks about Bruce Gilden and then automatically has a picture of somebody looking angry who is like brightly lit in the flash up close. Okay, and that's who you think he is. Go look at his Haiti work and then say, oh, okay. And educate yourself. Because that's another way to get rid of anything you're scared of. We all have this kind of like fear of the unknown or fear of things that are different. And I guess that maybe that comes from the fact that ultimately our lives, we have no idea why we're here. We have no idea what's going to happen when it's over. So there's this pervasive sense of no idea why I'm here, no idea where we came from, no idea where our place in the universe is, no idea what's going to happen when I die. So you just generally have this undercurrent of fear of the unknown, because we live in a paradigm that basically is like everything's unknown. So
I think
that's like, ugh.
we'll get this out before I forget about it. I think our level of fear matches our levels of experience. And the best way I can compare or give the analogy is, so I enjoy boxing. I'm not a professional boxer by any means. And I do enjoy the sparring part. It's an adrenaline rush, right? And what I can say is when I first started sparring, like I've seen it from like the biggest, tallest people of all shapes and sizes. When they first get in the ring, they don't know how to, proper form and stuff like that. They're scared to get hit regardless. I don't care. I've seen it all. And sure enough, soon as they see the body move, they clench up, they close their eyes, they turn their backs, right? And that's fear of getting hit with no experience. And then the more experience you get, you understand you're going to get hit. You're in a sport where the purpose is to get hit, but the experience is more higher. You accept that fact it's going to happen, and you learn ways to try to counter the punch, right? So you hit, don't get hit, or you're going to get hit, you find ways to absorb the hit, right? Fear is probably at its highest peak when your experience levels are at its lowest.
Yeah. Well, and after a while, because I took martial arts for a little while, you learn that getting hit sometimes can be something that you can use to exploit a moment when your opponent is vulnerable.
Yeah.
Like, so you might actually invite a hit to open up a weak spot, or or create an opening for you to then hit them back. I remember like one of the first things we learned in karate was when someone hits you, when you block something, it isn't a single act. You don't just block and then stand there. You block and then follow up.
Yeah, counter.
You block and counter and counter and counter, and you don't just hit once, you hit twice or three times or whatever. And I think to make an analogy to what we're talking about, to bring it back to photography, fear can be an opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
Because whatever you're most scared of, if you go and you do it, make yourself do it. Once you've kind of killed that fear, you grow and you end up finding what you're capable of. And I've had people who maybe gave me some shit or questioned me. Like a perfect example. I shot some pictures of some Senegalese street vendors a couple of weeks ago down in Soho. And it wasn't a fear-based thing, but it's like this combo kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. And I went out because one of the guys was dressed in this like amazing robe, and all these guys are selling bootleg bags and watches and things like that. And the cops routinely come down and bust the place up and take all their shit. So they're constantly like looking out for cops, and they're suspicious of anybody who comes up and talks to them. Like they're there to sell stuff. That's their job. They're not there to be buddies with anybody. But these guys were dressed so amazing, and I wasn't getting there's not a lot of tourists in New York these days. So it was kind of like, I'm like, these guys look really interesting to photograph, and I know that that's not why they're here, and I know they're probably going to say no, but I got to try. So I went out and I talked to the guy, went up to this one guy, and I told him how amazing he looked, and I just like said, hey man, look, I got the camera, this is what I do, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, was very standoffish and very suspicious. And I had explained to him what I did. I showed him my phone. I said, this is a film camera. I want to picture you. You look amazing. And his friends came all around because he saw I was talking to this one guy, and so several friends came around. So now all of a sudden I'm talking to a guy who I know is not going to be receptive. Then his friends come around. Mm-hmm. Now in that moment, like a lot of people could have just been like,
yeah, I'm out of here. Bye-bye.
Scared. But so he was like, he's like, how much you pay me? How much you pay? And I'm like, oh, I don't pay, man. I'm like, I'm going to give you the pictures. Mm-hmm. And they're like, no, you pay. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to pay. I'm like, look at my pictures. I'm like, you want to look, I'm going to make you look good. And then one of his friends is like, you pay. And I said, I don't know if I can make you look good. I know I can make him look good. You know, I started like breaking their balls, and they were like laughing. And I'm like, oh, this guy, he's like, what about this guy? And I'm like, yeah, he looks good enough. I'll take his picture. I'm like, this guy, he needs work. Go home and change. And I just started giving him a hard time. And the more I gave them a hard time, they were laughing and everything. And he's like, are you you're a weird guy. You're going to do something weird with these pictures. I'm like, no, man, no. I'm just going to take cool pictures and I'm going to send them to you. And he said to me, he's like, if you do something weird, I'm going to find you and I'm going to come and I'm going to get you. And he wasn't kidding.
Yeah. He's going to find you.
And yeah, so I was like, oh my God, we're down. And what ended up happening was I did a photo shoot with 8 of these guys on the street in Soho. And it was like an editorial fashion shoot because they were wearing a lot of the clothes that they were selling. It was all kind of knockoff shit. Some of it might've been real, but like, you know, it's a mixture of like Supreme and Louis Vuitton and Dolce & Gabbana, you know, like all these different brands and hats, and and the sun was out and it looked amazing. So it literally turned into like a fashion editorial shoot with 8 people on the street.
Hell yeah.
And so every time they came to me, because they were like, oh, how much do I have to pay you? That was the other thing. Well, how much am I going to have to pay you? How much do you want? I'm like, nothing. I'm going to give them to you for nothing. And then eventually they were all like, oh, give me your Instagram. And I sent them the pictures, and these guys were like completely blown away. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the things that we can do, because we're photographers, is everybody's used to seeing pictures, but they're used to seeing like iPhone snaps and kind of what that stuff looks like. And because the iPhone makes all the creative decisions about depth of field and then exposure and, you know, all this other stuff, like the pictures end up looking kind of like a certain way. So when someone sees a picture where, you know, you've made creative decisions where it's like actually looks like a creative photograph, and you know, they're kind of amazed. And these guys were like completely blown away that what the pictures look like. I mean, I was blown. I knew they were going to look amazing, but they looked great. But again, completely, you know, at any one of those points, it was like getting hit.
Yeah.
I could have turned my back, like you said, and been like, oh, you know, things are awkward.
Yeah.
You know, they're questioning me. They're telling me I have to pay. Or they're asking me, you know, if I have to pay them. They're telling me they're weird. They're telling me they're going to hunt me down. You know, all this stuff. And here, I'm closing the door. And I could have just, at any moment, flinched and walked away. Mm-hmm. And I just stayed in it. And I ended up getting some incredible pictures.
Yeah, and that's, stick with it.
Yeah, and what I did was every time there was a moment, there was a moment of fear. Mm-hmm. I leaned into it. That's kind of also like a New York thing, I think, to a degree. Is like there's that whole thing of, you know, if you don't want to be a victim, you don't, you know. And this goes back to me like being in the city when I was in my early 20s and in like the 80s, mid 80s, and just like kind of walking the streets. Like if you didn't want to be a victim, you have to not look like a victim. You know, if you look like somebody who somebody can just take their shit, like someone's going to take your shit. Yeah. If you look like you might give them a hard time, then they might say, I want to pick somebody else. So that whole thing of like when someone says, what are you doing here? Well, what are you doing here? What do you want to know for? You know, like, you just like come back. You just come back. And I didn't come back. Yeah. And I didn't come back in an aggressive way. I came back in like in a friendlier, like, there's nothing wrong here. I'm not weird. I'm going to give you something that's amazing and you're going to love it. And just stay with that and stay with that and stay with that. Yeah. And it's just like you walking down the street with your guy. It's like, stay with me. Just watch what I do. Don't, you know, just embrace it. Just be cool with it. Yeah. And you know, you'll get there.
He did. He got there.
I had, in that moment, I had a fear. What I had was that day, my fear that day, which is the fear that I have every day, every week in my life as a photographer, is I'm not going to get any pictures. Mm-hmm. That's my fear. When I go out, I'm out. My kids are at camp or at school. I've got a limit. I'm looking at my watch saying, when do I have to leave? And my fear was, I've got a roll of film loaded in the camera, and I'm going to go home and I have no frames on this camera. That's my fear. And that is a greater fear than me going up and talking to 8 people and trying to wrangle 8 kids from Senegal on the street.
I was just about to say that. The ultimate fear for me is the fear of missing out. And it's not it's like a completely safe fear, right? Because I control it. And it's produced by me wanting to go out and then debating with myself, do I take my camera? The answer is yes. You always take your camera. Or do I not take the camera and miss that opportunity? What if, right? The fear of missing out, FOMO. That's mine. And it always gets me every time. I'm like, I'm just going to be really quick. I'll leave the camera. I don't need it. It's going to slow me down. And it really doesn't, because I have it, slung around my shoulder. So it's not like it's doing anything. And I'm like, but what if the moment is there and I miss it? So,
yeah.
Before we hit the next segment, I just want to say, or give you the opportunity to see if you have ultimate fear, or is it the same?
My ultimate fear is not getting the pictures. Mm-hmm. But then I think that's also allied with, I don't want to become predictable. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get lazy. So, and I want to be as good as I can be, and I want my next picture to be better than my last picture. But the only way I'm going to do that is by doing it.
You said predictable. What do you mean you don't want to be predictable?
Okay, I'm going to try to make this as quick as possible, but it's a good illustration.
I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Go.
I went and saw the D.N. Arbus Constellation exhibit at the Park Avenue Armory, which just closed this past week, right? And it's been a controversial exhibit for some because the way that the work was presented was all of her work was kind of put in this room and on these lattices where it was hung and like on different, on these lattices that were in the middle of the floor. And some of the work was like up high, so high that you had to like be on your tippy toes to see it. And then some of the work was like down by your ankles. And it was like, there'd be pictures of her work of queer people and pictures of the circus freaks that she did. And then pictures of insane asylums and picture of twins. And it was all just kind of next to each other, and pictures of celebrities kind of everywhere. It was on the walls. It was on these lattices. And then in the back, there was a giant mirror. So when you walked in the room, it looked like it was endless D.N. Arbus. Like you look like, how am I ever going to see this work? And it was not organized in any kind of a way that was discernible. Like you couldn't say like, oh, let me walk down this aisle and then we walk down here. Most exhibits you go in and you go in this and there's an entrance and there's an exit and there's a whole flow. And the pictures are all on the wall and they have a little card that explains them. And this is a period where she did this, and then she went to this, and then she committed suicide. And here's how people critically look at her work, and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And it's very predictable the way everything's organized. And what I loved about Constellation was it was not that. Mm-hmm. It was like an explosion of work, and it was to look at it was challenging, to absorb it was challenging, to put it in context was challenging. And a lot of reviewers had a problem with that. They're like, I couldn't do any of those things. It's really hard for me to understand the work. Everything was just scattered, blah, blah, blah. It was high, it was low. And how many times do we need to go to a photography exhibit where it's like I just explained, the entrance, the exit, everything done with a laser ruler, so it's exactly on the right thing, right at sight line, little index card that explains it. You've seen that a million times. I'm not saying that it's not good to see work that way. It's fine. I don't have an issue with it. But it's great that somebody said,
they were thinking differently.
Let me just take all this work and decontextualize everything and put it in this way. And it's almost like, when she did her work, she rambled through the streets, she followed her instincts. And as photographers, particularly if you shoot in the street, you can go down the street and there's nothing. And then you might get a tickle that says, go down that street. And you go down that street and then all of a sudden there's this like amazing thing there. And then you go back the next week and there's nothing there. So it's almost kind of random, like when you're walking through these lattices, like it almost felt like walking down a street and you didn't know what you were going to see. And a lot of people had a big problem with that because a lot of people want everything to be linear. They want it to be predictable. They want to be able to absorb it. That's why the feed, the algorithm, it's like we're getting used to seeing things in a certain way that just kind of served up to us a certain way. And I kind of like the discomfort of not being predictable. Like, what am I going to shoot landscapes next week?
Yeah.
Am I going to shoot a hand? I'm going to put up something on my feed, which is just pictures of some guys I took working out on Coney Island on these like metal bars, and they're kind of just segments of their bodies, and it's totally decontextualized from what it is, because that was the way that I took the photographs. I'm like, I'm not going to show you any background of really what this is. It's forms. And I like that. I don't want to be, I could be some guy who did editorial documentary photographs on the Coney Island beach of guys that work out and take, and do a whole summer of that if I wanted to. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that, but I just wanted to do something different. And maybe at some point I'll do something that's like strictly documentary. People say, I know you never do that. And I go, yeah, I just felt like doing it. But becoming predictable, like saying that here's my label. Hi, my name is street photographer. Fuck that. Hi, my name is portrait photographer.
Here comes a tie back.
Don't be predictable. Once you find yourself doing the same thing over and over again, like I see some people who do street portraiture and in New York City who are good photographers, but they're all headshots and they're all shot the same way and the pictures all look exactly the same. It's just a different face in the picture. Move the person. Shoot it at a longer distance, shoot it at a closer distance, shoot just their eyes, shoot just their mouth. Like you don't have to do it the same way.
You don't have to move the person either. You can move yourself. But so here comes a rhetorical question as we wrap this one up and go to the photos of the week. So remember last week I was kind of talking about normalizing, just be a photographer. And specialize in a medium. What is a film photographer going to call himself when film is finished?
Why do you have to call yourself anything?
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Rhetorical.
I mean,
completely rhetorical.
I would never call myself a film photographer, and I wouldn't recommend that anybody like tells themselves that they are one thing or the next. It's like, okay, if you're a film photographer, okay, that's part of the process. But okay, so you're a film photographer because you shoot Polaroid or you shoot 35 millimeter, you shoot with an M. So does that mean you and Sally Mann are the same fucking thing?
Not at all. Cool.
Well, so there you go. So what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. What it means is it's a fucking hashtag that because you're trying to get found on Instagram. Yeah. It doesn't mean anything. It literally doesn't mean anything.
They're trying. Why does this thing keep jumping? Okay, sorry. Trying to.
No worries.
So last week you shared a photo of the guys
like
in
Bourdain?
The one in the subway. And I was out last week.
I'm totally flaking. Guys in the subway. I thought I did a Guy Bourdain picture last week.
No. This is not the photo of the week. You shared a photo of the guys in the subway. Remember? 3 guys?
No.
All right. Anyways, you sent me.
Anyway,
that's amazing. You sent me the photo. Anyways, so. This one
was it in the pod or was it just off
in the
on
pod.
the side?
You explained about it. So, anyways, moving on. I was out last week and I was taking some photos and then I was, going through what I took and then I was like, oh man, like it kind of has that same effect, but it's reversed.
Oh yeah.
So
this is one of your pictures?
This is my photo.
Nice.
This would be the guy looking back, and then you got the other 3 bodies looking in one direction. Anyways, I was like, oh, it kind of matches. So just wanted to share that. Completely, totally unrelated. I didn't even know I got that specific photo. I was using the 135, and the box is so tiny that I was just like, I was waiting. I was just waiting for anything and like just pushing at certain moments. I'm like, oh, that's the moment I want. That's the one I want. I wasn't just, spray and pray. And then this one, I don't know why I really like this. I was out the previous week and I think the layers of
that's cool too.
the light. Yeah, that is also a my
Very cool.
photo.
Yeah.
So
yeah, very cool.
I like the cups. They kind of mirror each other, but on different levels, different planes. There's actually more cups here. They're kind of just muted out by the lack of light. But anyways, I appreciate that. So
very cool. I like all the negative space in it. It's great.
Appreciate it. This isn't my exhibition, but going into the photos of the week, here is yours. And I'm thinking of a name. I'm probably 100% right, but we'll find out. So, all right, here is the photo of the week, people. For Jim, this is Jim's photo of the week.
So do you know who the photographer is or no?
By the editing style and how close it is, I'm going to say it's a Ralph Gibson.
No. Good guess.
Fuck. I was wrong. 100% wrong.
This is pretty obscure.
Mm-hmm.
This is Lillian Bassman.
Mm-hmm.
And she is a photographer who started off her career as an editor at fashion magazines and hired people like Avedon and Robert Frank to do editorials, and then said like, oh, that doesn't look that hard. I can take pictures too. And then became a photographer herself and shot a lot. And then at some point in the 70s, she was taking straight fashion photographs. And at some point in the 70s or 80s, she just decided that she didn't like any of her work, and she destroyed a tremendous amount of her negatives and prints, just shredded them and threw them in the trash. I mean, I'm sure it was incredible, amazing work, and she just threw away a ton of it. But she decided to keep some of the images and then redevelop them and then bring them into Photoshop and completely change them and remove sharpness, increase the contrast, and basically devolve the photographs. Like basically kind of like destroy the pictures. So this at some point, I'm sure, was a picture that was much sharper, had a lot less contrast, might have been in color, and was more of a kind of a straight kind of a fashion photograph. But she just decided after destroying all this work, I'm going to make my pictures look like this. So if you buy one of her later books, she has all these pictures that are kind of these fashion pictures where the contrast is so extreme that large parts of the image are either completely blown out white or completely black. And she had a renaissance in people's awareness of her photography and appreciation for her photography because of her doing this. Yeah. So it was this process of taking something. Think about that. If we're having a fear-based conversation, think about having this body of work that you shot over decades of like fashion photography, where you're trying to make things beautiful and perfect because you're going to go to a magazine, and then you're like, at some point in your life, you get so dissatisfied with stuff that you trash most of it. But what you have left, you then take it and remove all this information from the photograph and degrade it and destroy information in the photograph to make this. And then people say, this is amazing and unusual. And then that becomes what you're known for. Nobody she's not known at all for her early fashion work. What she's known for is the work that she took and basically turned into this kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think there's so much that's great about this image, but in terms of the composition of the frame, it's a perfectly composed frame. Yeah. But the expression of the model, the hat, the way that the line kind of goes into the black area, comes back into the white area, her one eye, where the fingers are, the fact that their hands kind of split and there's this V right next to her eye, that kind of complements the V of the dress that she's wearing. The fact that one shoulder is dipped down. On the right side of the frame is extreme brightness blown out. On the left side is extreme darkness. Her body has this extreme contrast in it. I mean, I think it's brilliant because, again, in a time where we're chasing the ultimate in resolution and sharpness and dynamic range, this is somebody who took all of that out of there. And those things that, are held up as advancements that we're supposed to want or desire. Here's a photographer who took all that and said, "Oh, I'm going to go in the opposite direction, and I'm going to remove all of that. Yeah. I'm going to remove dynamic range. I'm going to remove detail. I'm going to remove sharpness."
So when I saw
so that's my photo of the week, Lillian Bass.
First, I gotta say this is the first time I've seen this person's work. So thank you for educating me. We'll have to do some more research into her. The very high contrast kind of gave me the Ralph Gibson feel, right? So yeah. That's why I kind of thought it was Ralph Gibson, which I was 100% wrong when I said I was 100% sure I was right. Anyways, it's okay to be wrong. This is a really good image. I like how there's the white that kind of just slashes across the middle in an angle. And there's like black on both sides. I think this is a very powerful image, well composed. I like the pose. The hands, right? I like the one eye. I think the eye is probably, for me, well, humans like eyes. So I think that is, for me, what anchors me into this and just drew me in immediately. So great image.
And and the craziest thing about the picture, if you think about it for a second, where's her other eye? Mm-hmm. The finger is spread. No, the finger, if you look at where her eye would be, you should be able to see it. But she's blown the highlights out so much that she's blown the eye completely out. So there's no eye there where there should be an eye. It's kind of freaky. And then if you look at her hand on the left side of the frame, if you look where her wrist goes down, her wrist at a certain point gets completely lost in the highlight. Mm-hmm. And there's no definition of the arm. Yep. It completely disappears.
It's just all white.
So it's really, in a lot of ways, what she's done by making the contrast be so extreme is turned it into an abstraction. And to think about the origin of this picture, and it was probably being used to sell like a beautiful hat and a dress or whatever, mm-hmm. and the fact that she's kind of deleted all this information. It's just, you could look at this picture and it's like, okay, what could I extract from this picture instead of just looking at it and saying, okay, that's cool. If I was going to go shoot, what could I do? Well, I could change where my metering is. If I'm shooting on film or digital, I could say like, all right, let me spot meter and put someone in extreme light and then meter for the highlight so that everything around them, if they're in bright sunlight and I meter off an area that's well lit, everything that's not that is going to go to black. Or let me meter for the black, and then so everything is going to be, I'm going to get shadow detail, but I'm going to lose everything that's in the light. Mm-hmm. You can do those things. You don't have to follow some dogmatic rule of like expose for the highlights because you're using a digital camera, or expose for the shadows because you're using a film camera. You could just say, let me fuck with it and see what I come up with. Let me not be scared of not following the rules and then see where that takes me.
Yeah. Don't be scared.
That's why I like this picture.
Don't be scared to do your own thing. Cool.
Do it wrong.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
All right. So good image. All right. That was very nice. I like it. Thank you for educating me. And here is mine. I feel like it was a little lacking on the creativity as far as getting an image, but I seen this. So I wanted to use the photographer, but then I wanted to get like a photo that was, for me, like perfect, but is not one of the popular ones. But then I saw this, and the juxtaposition is what hit me the most, was how right under the person's face, I'll explain who the photographer was momentarily, but it was life, right?
Well, it's not Cartier-Bresson because it's a square, so it's somebody who shot with a rollie.
It is someone who shot with a rollie, and we've been talking about her for quite some time.
Vivian. So it's got to be Vivian Maier.
It is Vivian Maier, and I went into my photo book library and I was trying to find a book. I had a couple picked out, and then this one book just jumped out at me last minute. I was like, I'm not going to use Vivian Maier. I'm trying to stay away from like the names that we've been kind of repeating over the last few episodes. So I was going through, I picked up a book from Greg Girard, some other photographers people may not know. I picked up another Daido Moriyama book, an Araki. And then out of nowhere, this one, the book it caught my attention and I was like, it's gotta be a sign. So I grabbed the book and I was going through it. And remember earlier, I was telling you I was so sleepy today. I don't know why. I was just like falling asleep. And then I saw this and I was like, oh, it's gotta be a sign. Okay, this is it. So it's a very simple street image, right? But here she is doing something that no one really was doing in this era. Or were they? And then just people didn't know about them. So it's a
I think that there are people who are doing photography like this, in this era. But I think what is interesting about her whole story is, when you look, first of all, she's a woman,
mm-hmm.
which is an anomaly for these times in this type of photography, because there's not a lot of women street photographers that we've seen that have gone out and produced a body of work like that. So she's an anomaly relative to other people who are photographing. But what's interesting is this is a nanny who, like, in her spare time would kind of go out and do this. This isn't somebody who like worked for Magnum or wasn't Irving Penn or Robert Frank or any of these people who dedicated themselves to photography or who were working for Life magazine or anything. She was just doing this for her own head. And the fact that she had this sensitivity and this keen eye,
mm-hmm.
and she was just this kind of unknown person. I think there's this extra dimension to her photographs when you think about, and this gets back to that whole thing that I kind of mentioned earlier about like the unknown of life. Were it not for the fact that someone found all her stuff in a storage unit, this stuff could have all ended up on a trash heap. And she's somebody who produced, work that's incredible. I don't know if genius is the right word, but I think her empathy certainly is genius. I don't see things in her work that are totally unique. But what's unique is her perspective. She's a woman who's not a professional photographer, who's producing professional grade work, and she's like a nanny, and then she's not showing it to anybody, and it almost was completely lost. And it makes you think, all of us out there, I mean, I think we can all see some of ourselves a little bit in Vivian Maier, like, because we're doing all this work and we're not being paid. We're anonymous people, really. And when we die, where's all our stuff going to end up? In a trash heap? Is my kid going to keep the hard drive? Like, is it all just going to kind of go away? So the enigma of her, I think the thing that that resonates for me with her is, she's doing it because she loves to and because she needs to, and she's not doing it for anybody but herself. And were it not for a little quirk of the universe,
mm-hmm.
none of us would have gotten to see any of this work. So it's kind of amazing in that level.
Well, whoever was that person that, bought the lot, the little, the storage container that had all of these images, good on them, and good on them for actually putting it out. Again, it's kind of like, the ethics, right? Ethical part, thinking about it. And like, we're blessed that we get to see the images, right? She's got an amazing story, as you kind of highlighted. But for me, it always comes back to did she really want these to be seen? And like, that's what
there's no indication that but there's no one. See, that's the thing. Everybody asks that,
Mm-hmm.
and is it right and all this other stuff. First off, do you think when some pharaoh got buried in a fucking pyramid with all his like wooden boats and slaves and mummified crocodiles and everything, that he was like, oh, I'm totally cool with like someone 4,000 years from now digging my ass up and putting me in the Metropolitan Museum of Art? Or like King Tut would have been like, yeah, sure, take my corpse and like parade it around America and, have people come see it in a museum. But, if you look at the history of mankind, I mean, unfortunately, there's like, if anything's left around at some point after a certain enough time, if it's of any intrinsic value, someone's going to be like, hey, check this shit out. And they're going to try to monetize it or make people look at it. I don't know that she had anything written down in her will or had expressed to anybody a desire for her pictures never to be seen by anyone. So this whole thing of like, the moral argument, the ethical argument, it's like, you know what? If she didn't want it to be seen, she would have taken all the shit and thrown it in a fucking furnace and maybe not left it in a storage facility and just had it picked up by somebody else.
Yeah.
So the people that have ethical questions about this, it's like, I don't know, it just gets kind of tiresome because it's like, are you just looking for something to fucking create a controversy about? She's dead. It was in a storage facility, and she didn't have a note that said, I don't want anyone to ever see these pictures. So let's not manufacture a controversy. I'm sure if Vivian Maier came back and was reincarnated and someone brought her to ICP and showed an exhibit that people were like waiting in line to see and was sold out and everyone was talking about what a genius she was, she would not be pissed off. She would not be upset. She would be happy as a clam, I'm sure.
You people like these things? These photos?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. But
like, think of it. Like anybody, if it's like, wow, your genius is like so amazing. This means so much to me. What, you're going to be angry about that? Like, it's a non-argument to me. I mean, I don't know, but it's a I think it's just manufactured controversy.
Oh, either way, I teeter both lines, right? Again, so I'm really glad that I have the opportunity to witness this work. It's very great, and I think the world needs to see it. But
yeah, agreed.
So.
Agreed.
Cool. All right, sir. As we wrap it up, we had a really good session about fear. Any last remarks that you'd like to give the fans, listeners, and supporters?
Well, I mean, I think we've seen that like a couple of people chime in and said that they enjoy the show and that it's been good to listen to. That's very gratifying to hear. And obviously we're talking about stuff and in an area that is pretty inside baseball. So it's great that anybody wants to kind of listen to that. I would just encourage anybody who's listening to this, like if you want us to cover anything in particular or, mention anything or you have any questions or, any of that stuff, just please in the comments or in DMs or whatever, hit us up and ask us. Like anyone who listens to this, if someone thinks that something that I said or you said that they agree with it, disagree with it, they have a different perspective on it, it helps us when we hear other people's perspectives on what we're talking about, because it might make me think, oh, I didn't think about it that way, or, oh, someone said like, oh, well, you're wrong because I read this thing and that counters what you said. I want to know that. I don't know everything clearly, we're all, travelers on the same road, and I'm interested to hear anybody's perspectives, questions, comments. So please, in the YouTube comment section, post your comments. If you want to DM Ricky or I mean, I'm on Instagram. I'm at the Trickness. Like, I'm happy to chat with anybody, talk to anybody. I'm on Substack too. So, yeah, that's it. Just it'd be great if we hear from people, and if they have any comments, questions, thoughts, please share.
Yeah, feel the same. So enjoy these little recording sessions, kind of different from the 3+ years that I did of just having conversations with other, which I do plan on resuming in some point. I think I don't want to say I exhausted that, but I think I gave enough. and try something different for now, temporary. So we'll keep up coming with some different unboxing videos. A great play on words, by the way. And I have an idea for next week's. I'll talk to you behind the scenes about that. And again, like Jim said,
Cool.
To the fans, listeners, supporters, hit the like, subscribe, drop some comments, leave us some feedback on how we can do. If it's feedback about the audio, I'm just going to apologize now. I've literally exhausted all of my, without paying for like professional services, I've exhausted everything, and I pay for a higher version of Adobe just to get some decent sounding audio. But I think there's not much else that I can do. So just want to say thank you, and hopefully, next week we'll definitely be recording. Just, keep listening.
Cool. Yeah, and thanks. Thanks to anybody who listens.
Mm-hmm. All right. So,
all right, man.
Good night, everybody. And this is Unboxing Photography.